All right, let's take a look at a couple of story problems here together. And I have some tables ready for us. The main thing to take away from this lesson is how you can create a table to organize the information you have, and it can help you see patterns in the numbers to help you solve the answer at the end. All right, so we're going to look at problem number 2 right here. Miss Groves has trays of paints for students in her art class. Each tray has 5 colors. One of the colors is purple. What fraction of the colors in 20 trays is purple? So we have quite a bit of information here. We know that each tray of paint has 5 colors in it. One out of those 5 colors in the trays is purple. And we want to know what fraction of the colors in 20 trays. So I have a little table up here for us. Miss Groves' paint, and I have it set up at the top of the number of trays because the problem tells us how many colors are in one tray and then how many of those are purple. And what we want to solve at the end is how many purples are in 20 trays, or what fraction of the colors in 20 trays is purple. Okay, so setting it up in a table can help us organize the information we have and follow a pattern to get to the end there with the 20 trays. So we're going to start here. If she had one tray, how many colors does that one tray have? Each tray has 5 colors, so 5 is going to be our denominator right there. Now, out of those 5, how many of them are purple? It told us that 1 was purple. Okay, so if she has one tray of paint, 1/5 of the paint in that tray would be purple. We're going to take that fraction of 1/5 and we're going to keep it going into this pattern until we get down to where she would have 20 trays. So here's how this table would work to solve the problem. If she had 5 trays, we can take the numerator and the denominator here that tells the purples out of how many colors and multiply both of those by 5, and that will tell us how many purples there are in 5 trays and how many colors altogether there are in 5 trays. So for 5 in the table, 5 times 1 is 5. We're going to multiply our denominator too. 5 times 5 is 25. So if she had 5 trays, 5 25ths would be purple. Okay, let's move on over to 10. Remember, our first fraction is 1/5. Let's multiply both of those by 10. The numerator by 10, 1 times 10 would be 10. And 10 times 5 would be 50. So 10/50ths of the paint would be purple if she had 10 trays. What if she had 15 trays? We're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator. Here's Oliver. He's jumping up on the couch. The numerator and the denominator by 15 to find out how many would be purple and how many colors there would be. So 15 times 1 is 15. And 15 times 5 would be, anybody? It would be 75. If any of you are working on your 15s at all on fact fluency. All right, now we're down to if she had 20 trays. So if she had 20 trays, we could take that 20 and multiply our numerator and our denominator to find out the number of purple and how many colors total. So 20 times 1 is 20. And 20 times 5 is 100. Okay, so the question asks, let's go back to our question here. what fraction of the colors in 20 trays is purple? In 20 trays, 20/100ths of the paints are purple, okay? This seems kind of crazy, all the work that we did, but another acceptable answer to this problem would be 1/5, because that's the simplified fraction of 20/100ths. 1/5 could also work too. No matter if she had one tray, 1/5 of them are going to be purple. If she had 10 trays, if you look at that, 10/50ths, that could still be simplified to 1/5. 1/5 of it would still be purple. If she had 15 trays, still 1/5 of it would be purple. 20 trays, even though it's 20/100ths, that's still the same as 1/5. Okay? So there's one example of using a table. And now we're going to look at another problem. Problem number 1 right here. A used bookstore will trade 2 of its books for 3 of yours. If Val brings in 18 books to trade, how many books can she get from the store? Okay, so again, it's a good idea to take your information and organize it in a table to help you get to your answer at the end. So I've made a quick little chart here for us for the bookstore. And there's 2 parts to this that the story problem gives us. It tells us that if you bring in 3 books, if you give the bookstore 3 of your books, they will give you 2. They will trade it for 2 of their books. We want to know how many books Val could get back if she donates 18 of her own books, okay? So the 2 groups I set up for us were trade, meaning this is what the store will trade you. This is how many of the books they will give you. And your books, how many that you bring in. So if she brings in 3 books, the bookstore will give her 2. We want to know how many books she could get from the bookstore if she brings in 18. So what we're going to do, remember we did with common denominators, we talked a lot about multiples of the denominators. We're going to use some multiples of 3 as our denominator here until we get down to 18, because that's how many books she's going to bring into the store. So 3 times 1 is 3. The next multiple, 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. And 3 times 6 is 18. Okay, so we're ready to fill in the rest of our chart now. We've got it down to 18. So this will tell us how many books she could get back traded from the bookstore if she brings 18 of her own books. So just the same as other equivalent fractions, we're going to follow that same rule. If we were taking 2/3 and we wanted to rewrite it as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 6, we had to multiply that 3 times 2 to get 6, right? So we are going to multiply our numerator by the same thing. 3 times 2 is 6, so we need to multiply 2 times 2, and that would be 4. So what this tells us is, if you bring in 6 of your books to the bookstore, they will trade you and give you 4 of theirs. Now let's go and see what it would be with 9. So we started with 2/3. To go from 3 to 9 as our denominator, we multiplied by 3. So we need to take 3 and multiply it by our numerator. 2 times 3 is 6. So if you take in 9 books, they will give you 6. And you can notice a little pattern here. This could help us out too. That's what we did when we came up with our multiples. We're going to do the same thing to get our numerators there on the top too. All right. Now, if we have a denominator of 12, if you bring in 12 books, that was multiplied by 4. So now let's take our numerator and multiply by 4. 2 times 4 is 8. And now let's go with, if you bring in 15 books, that was multiplied by 5. So we need to take 5 and multiply it by our numerator. 5 times 2 is 10. And now we're up to if you bring in 18 books. 18 books, we multiplied it by 6. So 6 times 2 would be 12. Okay, so the question wanted to know, how many books could Val get from the bookstore if she brought in 18 of her books? Well, if you bring in 18 of your books, the bookstore will trade you and give you 12. They would give you 12 books for the 18 that you bring in. So, making a table and following a pattern, you can see we multiplied both the numerator and the denominator by the same amount as it increased until we got to the number in the denominator that we needed there, being 18, in order to get our answer.